About 40 years ago, there was the first international conference on the Naqshbandiya in Paris. I think everyone who had written about the Naqshbandiya until then was invited and gave a paper. The papers were later published, and one of the editors of the collected papers of that volume is Dr. Thierry Zargۆn. Since then, he has published enormous amount of publications, much of them related to Sufism, and there is also quite a large volume related directly to the Naqshbandiya. He takes a special interest in the material culture of the Sufi orders, and his presentation today will take a look at one particular aspect of the material culture, the headgear of the Naqshbandi Khalifas. Thierry, the floor is yours.
Thanks.
And I think you have a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
So we move.
Yeah, thank you. Are you hearing me? Is it working? You are hearing me? So, first I want to thank the conveners of this conference for inviting me, and it's a chance to be in Kurdistan for the first time and to experience the hospitality of its people. So, in general, sorry, the first image. Sorry, so in general, the garment tradition in the Naqshbandi Khalidi Sufi order is far to be overly symbolic, contrary, for example, to the Ottoman Bektashi and Maulavi dervishes, whose garment display many symbols. The dress code of the Naqshbandiya and that of the Khalidiyya branch is more simplistic. The garment worn by its member is generally inspired from that of the madrasa ulamas and students, dress and tari, the robe, jubba, and the turban, sarik or imama. However, since the Naqshbandiya is a Sufi order, the representatives, the Khalifa, of the head of the order are the recipients of a particular ritual of bestowing some sacred garments as a symbol of the transfer of spiritual legitimacy. The main objects are a cloak, the khilka, and a headgear, turban, taj, kulla, there are many words. There is a strong tradition in Sufism, partly inspired by the place occupied by these objects in the life of the Prophet Muhammad. The ritual of donning a headgear is present in the Naqshbandiya since the time of Baha'u'llah Naqshband in 14th century, and concern mostly the representatives of the Sheikh, the Khalifa, actually their spiritual successors, instead of the simple disciples. Baha'u'llah Naqshband, the founder of the lineage, was given a headgear, a kulla, by Ali Ramitani, one of his first masters. The headgear, Kullai Azizan, is named from the lakab, Azizan, of the Sufi sheikh, so of Ramitani. The kulla refers generally to a conical hat. This Kullai Azizan has occupied a pivotal place in Baha'u'llah exchanges with his master, and especially with Amir Kulal, who died in 1370, and this Amir Kulal will link his headgear to the practice of the particular silent zikr, zikr rafi, precisely to his two aspects, the zikr of the negation and affirmation, the nafi wa isbat, and the retention of the breath, the abs il nafs. In a sense, the headgear embodies these two practices. The bestowing of a headgear was maintained in the Naqshbandiya order by Ubaydullah Arah in 15th century, the second notable figure of this order after Baha'u'llah Naqshband. He led the diffusion of the order in India and to the Ottoman world. Its expansion of the Naqshbandiya continued in 16th century thanks to Ahmad Sirindi, the renovator of this order, which was therefore known as the Naqshbandiya Mujaddidiya. Later, the ritual of bestowing the headgear was not abandoned. Let's mention, for example, the Mujaddidi Sufi Yakdast Ahmad Mekki in 18th century, who transmitted this hat to Mehmed Tokadi in Istanbul in 17th century. Surprisingly, in mid-19th century, Muhammad bin Abdullah al-Khani, 19th century, when appointed as the Khalifa by Mawlana Khalid, was bestowed a cloak only, the Abai Khilafa, and a banner, the Alam, for the guidance of the disciples of the order, but he was not given a headgear. Yet, Mawlana Khalid is not unaware of the role played by the headgear in the Naqshbandiya. In one verse of his Diwan, when displaying the Silsila Nama of the order, he mentioned, so Mawlana Khalid mentioned Ali Ramitani and his famous Taj, his famous hat. Further researches are necessary, nevertheless, to clarify the precise place of the headgear in the early Khalidiyya. However, Gumush Hanevi Ahmed Ziauddin in 19th century, one of the major Khalidi sheikh in the Ottoman Empire, has bestowed with his own hands the Naqshbandi Taj to his 116th Khalifa. Ömer Ziauddin Dagestani, a successor of Gumush Hanevi, who headed the lodge founded by the latter at Istanbul, in his book on the Fatwa of Sufism, answer to some questions about the sacred object used by the Sufi. And he praised particularly the headgear, but without giving any details about its shape. The headgear, he said, is venerated by all, even by animals, and give a great protection to his honor. A rare photograph of the illustrious Naqshbandi sheikh. So I put the picture. So there is a rare image, photograph of the illustrious Naqshbandi Kurdish sheikh Osman Sirajuddin bestowing the headgear to a Khalifa. It was published in a book in Tehran in 1967, and you can see the picture. This picture confirms that this sacred object is still a strong symbol of Sufi legitimacy, and it hints also to the transfer of spiritual and temporal authority from a master to his chosen heir. Nevertheless, we don't have enough details about the shape of the turban and its decoration. It would have been similar to the headgears worn in the madrasa of the Middle East. The situation was different, however, regarding the shape of the headgear among the Naqshbandi of the Mujaddidiya branch in Central Asia, India, and the Ottoman Empire. The situation is drastically different in the Ottoman Empire, which has encouraged the development of Sufi symbolism and the creation of new garments. The reasons are manifold. The pluralistic Islam among the Ottomans, the presence of several other religions, etc. Hence, when the Khalidiyya was introduced in Anatolia and Istanbul especially, it has undergone some change with its headgears. Several visual and architectural sources show us that the Naqshbandi and Khalidi Sufi have adopted two specific headgear, called Taj, the crown, or Sikke, the seal, usually wrapped with a long cloth named Dastar, or sometimes Imame. The top of some of these headgears is generally segmented in several parts. My aim here is to discuss two major characteristics of these headgears and to elaborate on their shape, on their geometrical decoration, and on their meaning. In addition to the real headgears kept in museum collection in Turkey, it exists several representations of this object in painting and funerary art, especially sculpture at the top of the gravestones or caves has bas-reliefs on them above the inscription. That is an Ottoman specificity. First, the Naqshbandi round headgear. The most common headgear or taj, crown, worn by the Ottoman Khalidi Sheikh and Khalifa is round, in form, and wrapped by a long cloth. Its top is generally segmented in 4 sections, terk. Let's say first that there are many similarities between Naqshbandi and Qadiri headgears. It is probably for historical reason, since, according to some Qadiri hagiographies, Abdul Qadir al-Jilani left a strong impression on the spiritual progress of Baudi Naqshband. For example, the 2 Sufi sheikhs are considered as intercessors, and sometimes they are called all together for help in calligraphic composition, like, for example, Madadi Ya Rui Shah Naqshband wa Gaus al-Jilani. According to Yahya Aga Effendi, the writer of a treatise on Sufi garment in early 20th century, the 4-section headgear was created by Abdul Razak, who was the son, very famous son of Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. Yahya Aga Effendi adds that the number 4, the 4th section, the number 4 refers to the 4 letters of several words. For example, the name of God, the name of Allah, Hussein, the Tawhid, etc. Number 4 hints also to the 4 sacred books, Taurat, Injil, Zabur, and Quran. Also to the 4 caliphs and the 4 schools of law. A 16th century Western painting shows a Naqshbandi Sufi wearing his wide cloak and a round headgear wrapped with a cloth. So this is a Western painting. But the 4th section of the headgear doesn't appear. It is also worthy to mention that one branch of the Naqshbandiya, called Zamburia, Istanbul in 18th century, mingled his teaching with those of the Qadiriya. The name of this branch comes from the fact that its members perform a zikr of the bees, the zikr Zamburi, which is neither silent, like in the Naqshbandiya, nor vocal, as in the Qadiriya, actually between the two. One specificity in this order is that the headgear worn by the sheikh welcomes a major Qadiri symbols at its top, actually a drawing of a rose, gul, which is sometimes closer to the representation of the star, Najm. A contemporary composition dated 2009 by Ayşe Nurgül Kabasakal displays a round Naqshbandi headgear wrapped by the dastar and circled by a poem dedicated to the Ottoman Khalidi Sheikh Ahmad Ziauddin Gümüşhanevi. The author of the poetry is Mustafa Parıldar. You can see the text in English and in Turkish. The poetry demonstrated the importance of the headgear in the contemporary Turkish Naqshbandi Khalidi. And you can see, look at the headgear, Sikhe of Shah Bukhari Bahauddin. Comes and look at the color of the heart ravishing ornament in this crown. If you want to see the headgear, the taj of the son of the sainthood, look at the glorious headgear, Tajifah, of the respectful Ahmed Ziauddin. And now I turn to the second kind of Naqshbandi headgear, which is conical. There is another headgear used by this Naqshbandi Sufi, usually called sikke, a seal. It has a conical form with a black wool of fur sewn on the lower part, nej mujgan, the eyelash, from the Persian mujgan, plural of muja. According to Aga Effendi, the mujgan serve to preserve the dervish from looking upwards and to oblige him to look in a respecting way towards the ground. It reminds the phrase, Nazar bar kadam, watching one step, which is one of the 11 sacred words and a major rule in the Naqshbandiya. The conical shape The conical shape is probably inspired from Central Asia, and it is shared by the Naqshbandi of Central Asia with dervishes or calendaria in this order, with few differences only. The mushgan, so the down part of the headgear, Naqshbandi, is clearly thinner than that of the calendar. You can see in this picture I took in Central Asia of a Naqshbandi Sufi with his particular headgear, conical. However, the two kinds of Naqshbandi headgear, that is round and conical, could be used in the same Sufi lodge. This is observable, for example, at the cemetery of the Shehul Islam Effendi Tekesi, Khanaka, Istanbul, built in 16th century. And I show you the picture, where we can see the conical and the round headgear present at the top of several gravestones. The conical headgear is visible also as a bas-relief in a gravestone of a Khalidi Sufi in the Balaban Naqshi Khalidi Lodge at Istanbul. Each resembles the real headgear worn by the Naqshbandi. The conical headgear is also represented by a contemporary artist in a calligraphic composition. It was painted by Ahmet Süley Enver, the very famous Turkish, and it is conserved in the private collection at Istanbul. Now, about some decoration of this headgear. There is a third kind of Naqshbandi headgear that is actually quite rare. And we have few examples preserved in museum and private collection of real objects. These headgears are 2 or 3 section hat, as you can see. The shape of the 2-section hat is inspired by a sword, the saifi, used to fight the ego. It is also named the sword of the Tawhid, using for the cutting of the soul to purify it. The decoration of the hat is vertical on the model of the Arabic letter Alif, an horizontal design. Regarding the 2-section Alif shape, the Alif letters refer to the straight path, Roi Mustaqim, and its equivalent to the Istiva Khat, the equatorial line, which divides the hat in 2 parts and reflects one verse of the Quran, which says that Allah created everything in pairs, day, night, paradise, earth, man, woman, the hidden, and the visible, Batun, Zahir, etc. However, there is no existing example of this particular Alif-shaped headgear. The origin of this word and Alif headgear should be Central Asian or Indian. And there is other image. So you can see the decoration in the form of Alif, very simplified form. When it has 3 sections, this hat is called Sikiye-i-Zehebi, the golden Sikke. The number 3 here has many symbolic values. Some refer to Sufism in general, the abandonment of the world, the abandonment of the next world, the abandonment of abandonment. Terki dunya, terki ukba, terki terk. Or it refers also to the essence, attributes, act, zat, sifat, af'al. The number 3 refers also to 3 rules of the famous 11 sacred words elaborated by Bahauddin Naqshband, that are having full awareness of the times, al-wukuf al-zamani, full awareness of the number, al-wukuf al-adabi, and full awareness of the heart, al-wukuf al-qalbi. The headgear also here embodies perfectly the spiritual path of the Naqshbandiya. At the time of Bahauddin Naqshband and Amir Kulal, the headgear had already hinted to the practice of the silent zikr and the breath control. It is almost like if the Naqshbandi have worn the symbolic manual of their mystical path. In general, the Sufi headgear also usually are usually embroidered with several motifs, which are geometric or floral. The choice of the Naqshbandi is quite limited due to their sobriety, contrary to the Qadiri, for example, which are more open to other symbols. The most commonly used symbols are geometrical design, we call bidahe, for example, that of the Arabic letter Alif, I showed you before, and also rarely the cypress, the sarvi, as you see in this Naqshbandi headgear. Let mention to conclude here several calligraphies in the form of Taj, which appear in the margin of the printed edition of Mustakimzadeh Süleyman Sadreddin, who was the translator in Turkish of the Maktubat of Ahmed Sirindi. And we can find very interesting decoration and drawings, also drawings in the form of, in the shape of Taj, in the marge of this book translation of Maktubat of Sirindi. And this is not surprising, because Mustakimzadeh was also the writer of a famous treatise on the Sufi headgears. In addition of the headgear, we can find also some other drawing in this Maktubat translation. And you can see now in the picture, so we can see what we can find in the margin. So picture of the Taj, of the headgear, picture also of banner, the halam, picture of cypress, the sarvi, and also of the rosary, of the moon crescent, hilal, and there is also, but I didn't put it in this diapositive, of the Hadith word, the Zulfaqar. So this confirms, and it will be my conclusion, that such symbols are sympathetic to the Naqshbandi Sufis. And so, in this brief presentation, brief lecture, I hope that you can feel some aspect of the symbolism in the Naqshbandi, we can see garment, and also some idea of what we can say the artistic aspect of Naqshbandi and Khalidiyya Sufi order. Thanks a lot for your...
Thank you very much, Thierry Zargۆn, for highlighting an aspect that we very rarely think of when we talk about the Naqshbandi and Khalidiyya. It was fascinating to watch this, and perhaps it has given people some idea about things that they might have seen once but have forgotten about. Maybe if you have any suggestions, any pictures that might be useful to Dr. Zargۆn, please approach him after this session. We're running a bit late, so I do not want to have a long discussion and certainly no statements, but I want to give time to a few questions. I see two people at least enthusiastic. I was told that women have priority if there are questions. Is there a question by a woman? No. You're not a woman? No. I see only 2, 3 male hands. You first, please. Your question is to?
عبد الجبار. دستيتا خوش دكتور عبد الجبار. بخو عبد الوهاب الشوشية نكسوسي شوش قندكي نافدارا كلها نزيكي آكرية. شوش عبد الوهاب الشوشي نكسوسي. عبد الوهاب شوشي يعني أبا تبابتي خوتشي كرتشي كذا. نعم. دو عبد الوهاب شوشية نكسوسي بله دو أو بلغنامي عثماني بيجي عبد الوهاب السوسي لهند طريقة ورقتيا أب آخفتنا دروستا بلغنامة شون مولانا خالد دمك شو بو هند دو صوفية بهدينان قلويبون يكم عبد الوهاب شوشي دو عبد الفتاح آكريي تيجيشتي تفهم كرجمن سباس أف بوتي بنيتا سباس.
Okay. You can answer that.
نعم شكرا لأستاذنا لكن لا تنسوا أن هناك قريتان باشا دو قند هيا دكتور العزيز قند سوس قند شوش 20 كيلومتر دوري أكريا سوسي نزيكي ويا أبا سوسية نشوشية شوش دناو قند دا قلعة هيا بله نخير أبا سوسية أويك يا دوي راستا درگاه هندستاني دا جهان آبادي جل كرد هبون يعني لبغداد لعمادية واندرا بل شاه عبد الله الدهلوي سلطة دا دست مولانا خالد نامه یک شانده بو همو خلفاء مجددی گو مسئولی یکم کو از جوی رازی ما مولانا خالده بوناوی مثل عبدالوهاب السوسی دماکو چو بو هندستانی بو اجازه ندایه اگر کو خلیفه عبدالوهاب السوسی شاه عبدالله دهلوی با نخیر او قد تربیه لجم شاه عبدالله دهلوی ندیتوه قد امکانتونه عبد الوهاب بلي عبد الوهاب السوسي نخر قد مصدر بحث نكت.
No, I think I suggest that at lunch you take the same table and continue the discussion. Yes, please. No. I have not given you the word. Silent.
شكرا جزيلا للمتحدثين الكرام. أغنيتم الجلسة بمعلومات قيمة جدا، وفي الواقع لم أشاهد في حياتي اهتماما بجلسة ثقافية بهذه الروح. أريد الأستاذ زارگۆن نقلنا إلى العالم الروحي الجميل لمولانا خالد وللنقشبندية. أنا أتمنى من اللجنة المنظمة من الأستاذ فرياد أن يمنحونا فرصة لو ساعة مساء أن يدعوا إحدى الحلقات الصوفية لنجلس معهم ونتمتع بالذكر النقشبندي الروحي الذي كان يؤسس مولانا خالد حركته عليه. يعني لو حضر بعض هؤلاء الذين رأينا طواقيهم الجميلة وملابسهم الجميلة وجلسوا معنا في إحدى القاعات ليس هنا، ممكن يعني ساعة أن نذكر معهم هذا الذكر الخفي النقشبندي ونسمع ختم الخواجكان. أعتقد هي فرصة روحية لن ننساها في السليمانية. بتمنى يحصل هيك يا أستاذ فرياد. شكرا.
Thank you. In fact, I had asked questions, but this does not need an answer. Perhaps it can be arranged, but there's a committee. There was another question over there. Yes.
شكرا جزيلا. رجاء الصراع بين مولانا خالد وبين عبد الوهاب السوسي ليس صراعا فكريا أو عقائديا، وإنما عبد الوهاب السوسي أراد أن يستفرد بمجموعة من الناس من الخلفاء والمريدين والمنسوبين لنفسه، فلذلك كانت الرسالة التي وجهها مولانا خالد إلى عبد الوهاب السوسي وإلى الآخرين رسالة شديدة اللهجة لهم. هاي أولا. وثانيا بالنسبة لكاكدلشاد أنا أتصور من هسته كم يعني دروش محمد كأول جار هاتوا خوي بهستر بوا خوي بتوانا بوا على أساس أو مولانا خالد يبردوا بلان دعائي كهستي كردوا قوة لا مولانا خالد قوتي عقل قوتي منطق وذكاء لبروا هيرشي كردوا تسري وصراعي لقلا كردوا وتنيا ببوتسوني قوم أو بوتسك أي صراعي فكري أو نبوا هردو كان نقش بنديبون سواس.
Well, yeah, I think a very brief answer is sufficient.
راسته أو الرسالة تشاكو وجوتي جبو عبد الوهاب السوسي. عبد الوهاب السوسي لجنبي فكر دنهبو راستي أو بلي سرفراز نبو لعمادية الإسطنبولي. مولانا خالد يعني نتحقق تقليدي ساسكر. يعني مولانا خالد لم يؤسس طريقة تقليدية لأن في المنطقة تكايا والطرق كثيرة، لكن هو أسس حركة لها أهداف، ومن أهدافه توحيد الأمة الإسلامية مع ثقافة الأكراد في هذه الأمة، ولهذا لم يسمح لأي خليفته أعمال يضر هذه الحركة المتمركزة في الشام، أولا في بغداد ثم في الشام. نشكر الأستاذ.
Okay. We have just heard that the Naqshbandi touch consists of has 4 parts, because 4 is the number. So we should have 4 questions, I think. The 4th question and the last question is yours.
شادمان بن للراسية يعني همو كونفرانسية همو كونغريا همو دانشتيوا بمبس وبأمانجي داهناني نية يشتني كان تشي زادستانه وشارستاني أنا وأقلاني بخاطر وأولانني بلين نجنجاوة حولي الراس كنوا يبدي يعني من تعقيب لقى صار تعقيبي ناكله لكن لم كجورة دانشنا أوي كمان هسم بيكد لسردمي بابتكانا مولانا بكارهن لا نابن مولانا بتنها وكو أوقات بديان ما ملامان هي بريز الشيخ بريز مانه مولانا أبي بلي مولانا خالد جاكر نقل بندكش إذا قال نبي باشا شنك إما مولانا جلال الدين الروميش مانه بوي ما في براسي برين مولانا خالد نفوته حقا لما دوا بوشيوه يعني بابا تنها مولا باز نكريب دوهم هسم كرياني لو يناني كبنشاننا درجاك عليه مزقوتي نقشبني ناكري يعني مزقوتي خانقاي نقشبنية أبي جاكريتو چونك همو طريقة كان لكردستان زور بجواني وركفتيات و مثلا عليه تقاري مراسمي خوي هيو أداي خوي هيو بيروي خوي هيو نزاو خني خوي هيو هروها نقشبني مزقوت بو أو كسانن كنوجا كان بلام كالي تكيه تايبته براسي بنقشة كانوا كالي غيري مهيني أو تايبته بقايرة كانوا جوازة قايرة كان تكيه نقشة كان خانقايا أبي أما جاب كينو من خود سليماني براسي تبيني أو منكردو كأو درجة أو هي سهم ولو تعقيب نية أو بحثي أو بحثي
سؤال نية
دكتور عبد الجبار باسكير.
Sorry, I cannot let you give another statement. We have no time for statements. I said we can only have questions.
عليه الشيخ خالد سليماني من براسي باش بحالي خم نمبسوا مكارتي باشو يعني شكو قولي بيروزي سليمانية كاتو درخاتو إيوه.
Thank you. Well, I think we should really end this session here, because some people might go hungry and we soon have another session. So there will be very little time for lunch. I thank everyone here present. I want especially to thank the translators who are not visible but who are performing an extremely important role. Thank you very much over there.